We'll get started. So the first item is the forward agenda. Any comments or questions?
Just the camping briefing that we talked about today.
Carol's got that noted. So today we'll go on to your 25-26 annual work program.
Okay, we'll just have to ask Carol to pull the pages over. We'll go to the second page. So just leading into this, our 10-1-1 report previously had all the roads and everything in it, but through the flood process, we obviously negated and put those in. So what we're looking at doing is review the 10-1-1 report to keep everything up to speed and what we're doing. But I suppose what we look at is just a background from our annual programs. There's a fair bit that comes out of the strategic plan. There's a lot coming out of the infrastructure and asset management plans. There's obviously other avenues we look to pursue funding for, which is the MRLGA road strategy. We are also looking at, we have a lot of service standards in place and we are looking at doing more service standards. There are other elements that we have to do under compliance through waste, swims, regulated signage, Australian standards and engineering. And predominantly our maintenance area for our program is historically funded with CPI on top of it. Also, we do get a fair bit of input from the community, and there's a level of community expectations which we have to manage, and sometimes we have to draw back on what we're able to do. And how we apply our works programs, there's a lot of various different fields, being construction, maintenance, waste and swings. We try to do that as proactively as we possibly can and do best practice and reduce reactivity. It's fine with our capital works program because you can put that in place and that's their predominant run, but maintenance of roads and so forth does impede that. But our maintenance crews generally get pushed from pillar to post, and the expectations there that they're going to be there within 24 hours of a complaint coming in, which is unfortunate. We just can't manage that.
So got 3,000 kilometres. Come on.
Yeah, possibly. So that's how we put together basically our works programs. So it is predominantly through proper processes. Next slide. What we're developing at present is a rolling 3-year program. So obviously there'll be a 1-year program put to council, or it'll be tabled today, with a 3-year program giving us an idea of where we're going to be. It's a guide only, and we're developing that. We've probably got that in a lot of places for some of our activities, but we've still got more activities to do. And what Glenn's doing is developing a 15-year program, which basically shows us where we want to be in ages in some time to get to. We obviously have optimal programs, but it's not always achievable. We obviously try to do what we best can with the resources we have, but unfortunately we can't always optimise everything and cover everything 100% like our roads program or all those other areas like open space and try to achieve what the community expect. What also has to be recognised that most activities are funded through the asset management plan, through the plans and capital and through maintenance. But there are other activities as tabled today, like stormwater, that's unfunded, and there's other areas that we find difficult in funding to meet the community expectations. And we're also going through a bit of a process now with historical knowledge. Given like the matters that we do receive when we do get complaints, and I'll put stormwater as an issue, we're rating them from low, medium to high risk, meaning that low risk is like nuisance water. So if water's laying outside someone's property and there's no water there, I'm not going to do anything with it. If there's property damage, then it's a high risk, then I'll look at what we need to do. And then that becomes probably the priority setting for when we do have funding available. But we do get a lot of complaints about potholes and water laying out in front of someone's property. It's nuisance water. We just can't do anything about it. So unless you do a substantial amount of works to it. So we're working through those systems at present. So to give you an idea of some of the programs, this is only a snapshot of everything. So with the asset management plan, we obviously have some bridges coming into play. Saunders Creek Bridge and then Black Hill Bridge is more so signage and railing. Dutton Mail Bridge is guard railing, and there's some other ancillary works to take the total up to 633,000 for those works. The Saunders Creek Bridge will probably be a considerable amount of work because there's a lot of designing in it. It is actually a structured bridge, and we would be looking at doing something very similar to Millandella, where we put culverts in to replace it. It's a lot cheaper version rather than actually replacing a bridge. So that'll take a long fair time to bring into play. Moving on, swims, we obviously have a lot of carried forwards in swims. We've got a lot of renewals and a lot of new upgrade works to do. So that's a plethora of information in that one. There's fencing, pumps, sheds, and all those sort of things, just all across all their 30 swim schemes. So that's a lot of that is carried forward. Because we had the flood issue, we had to pull them all out, put them back in. We did do some replacements and upgrades during that process, but there's still a lot of outstanding work in our swims. Next slide, Carol. Footpaths through our AMP, there's no new upgrades. We've actually been able to do some savings from last year's, which will be able to complement the work that we did out the front of here to the medical centre. But then there's only a small amount for a maintenance program, which we'll develop. That'll give us an idea of where we're going to spend the dollars, and we'll be able to put that in the report once we've actually got that finalised. And that'll be based on risk and also the precincts of where the works need to occur. Similar curb and channels from our asset management plan. There is no new upgrades programmed, but we do have $103,000 to do maintenance works and renewal of existing. So we'll endeavour to put that into the report as well, so to give everyone an idea of what works we're doing. And open space, we've got a significant amount in there, but we also have a significant amount of open space. So that's basically our maintenance to do all our open space in the area across the board in our region. Next slide, thanks. River structures, newly appointed asset management plan. We have $328,000 there in works to do. There's obviously development approvals to be done here and a lot of other referrals. But we have a section of the mooring at the Pierce Canal, which we're also looking at being able to capitalise with the CRO funding that's come on board as well. So we might be able to maximise that, and also with the due funding coming on board at a later date. Morgan Wharf, we've got $125,000 in there. That's really much investigations and concept design, so there's no repairs available for that yet. And Manor Wharf, we've got a significant problem down here. It's been fenced off for a while, so we get some dollars in there. And the Bow Hill is a carry forward job, which is the riverbank. It's about $97,000, which we're actually starting this week. So there's actually some works there to be done in the river structures. Then in stormwater drainage, we've got about $133,000 to do the maintenance works. Obviously, there's no capital, but that's where I said we're developing a matrix to work on how we apply that dollars and not to be frivolous in how we spend that money. Just because someone rings up and says, I have a puddle out in front of my place, which does happen. So we're just trying to work out how we're going to do this. And there's $98,000 in I bet there's about 5 other smaller projects, and they're all about $10,000 to $20,000 projects. So they come up to about $98,000. So they'll be listed in 10.11 as well. Next slide, thanks, Carol. Road maintenance. In road maintenance itself, we have a sealed road network, and I suppose when you start looking at sealed roads, coming from, I suppose, a roads background, if a sealed road was to fail, it's a significant amount of investment to rebuild. I think it was about Udunda Road, we did 4.3 Ks for $1.6 million when we rebuilt that. So about $375,000 a kilometre. So sealed road maintenance is a very important factor, and given it's normally a high-speed environment, so you also have cracking, edge breaks, signage issues, overgrown trees and so forth. So there is a significant amount of sealed road. So probably what we've got to focus on is what our priorities are rather than getting what the complaints are. Knowing what our priorities are, focusing on those, because if they fail, that's a significant amount of money in the future. Unsealed roads, we do have a lot of dollars in there. When you start seeing $3.2 million, there's about $670,000 of that, which is still flood recovery works. It also comes out of patrol grading and also maintenance. But then again, like you said, you've got 3,300 kilometres of road, and everyone expects them to be in a relatively good condition to be able to access, and it's difficult to maintain. And when we do maintenance, the issue is that I've got to stop a construction game to do the maintenance. Hence why we're looking at the plant replacement program. We've got one light bottom trailer now. In the future, I'd like to get a second light bottom trailer so they can actually deliver material. And if you've been up Diagonal Road just recently, I've delivered material onto Diagonal Road, and when the patrol grader gets there, they knock it up. So it actually makes more efficiencies in our work moving forward.
So have you ever looked at purchasing one of those jet patches?
Yes, we have, but the expense versus the amount of use we have, the utilisation is probably not warranted. So it's probably cheaper to actually hire it in for say a couple of months over your after your winter periods, and then you hire it in again as you need it. Purchase it's probably going to be about $250,000-300,000, and basically we wouldn't use it all year round.
Yeah, I was just looking at the aspect of like it's just a one-man operation rather than sending a gang of people out to fix the pothole.
Yeah, we did look at one of those trailer mounted ones. Murray Bridge did buy one, but they'd go for 2 hours work and come back and restock it. Because it's actually they'd go through that much material. So we have looked at what
Be
options
great
was.
out in the middle of nowhere, having to
Yeah.
get to the dead.
So we have looked at options at that sense, but it's probably at this point in time, because of our resources being stretched and that capacity, it's probably better in getting other kind of contractors in. Another issue we have is also vegetation control. We have our control graders grading every day of the week. And obviously the trees grow every time you cut some trees back, they grow back more voracious. And sometimes our patrol graders now can't get down some roads. So they're the issues that we've got to try and address where they're our priorities and also the community's priorities, and we're trying to set them into place. So that's how we approach our road maintenance. Next slide. Our unsealed road program, you can see the distances there that we're looking at doing. This is just a snapshot of those roads. So you asked today about Wanby Road. We've got 7.7 kilometres in there to do there, and basically that will take and consume the majority of those dollars in unsheeting of that road network. And there are some other roads sitting outside of those, which we're just working through the condition rating and the use of those roads to add to it. So that's this year's program. And the idea is generally when you start looking at a road safety, let's say, like if you look at Blackheath Road, we did some work last year, we did about 7 kilometres of it. The material was good, but because of the extreme traffic that we received on there through the development of the electronet there, we've actually looked at doing a binder treatment up there to trial that out. So we're looking at trying to extend the life of that material. But then when you start looking at a road like, if you say Harrogate Road, we did some last year, we'll do another section this year, and there might be another section the following year. So your rolling program highlights that you want to try and do a continuous project over time until the road is completely done. Next slide. Our sealed road program, that's what we're looking at, doing some reseals. We did Morgan Cadell last year, but this is just to do the intersection rumble strips to replace those. That's why it's only 120 metres long. Caton Road, we're looking at working in with the Barossa Council on that, because obviously we work with the Caton Road from Caton to McCullough, working with them, but then we've got a road which actually goes to Eden Valley, which is partly their road too. We don't want to go reseal it if we have the opportunity of widening it or doing some of the work. So that's subject to conversation with the Barossa Council. St Kitts Road there, it is due for a reseal in part of it. It's due for a resheet, but what we're looking at doing is probably being able to attend to some of the rural living environment there and doing some other work. So we're just costing that up at present. And obviously we've got Murraylands Road in there at this point in time, and then there's supplement application which may be approved. We're not sure if it's going to get approved to do the remainder of it. So Murraylands Road was a 3-year project. We did 5Ks last year. We're going to do 2.7Ks this year, and then next year we're looking at doing widening of the lower part from Blanchetown to McBean's Pound, and then also doing Yandia Road, because that's part of the overdimensional road. That's part of the freight route. So we may be able to capitalise and do that all in 1 year. Hence why we have an accelerated works program to offset some of the works. So that is our sealed road program for now. Next slide. In the waste management area, we're obviously just commenced on the landfill cell completion. It's about $1.9 million in essence for a project. We'll still continue to do the assessment of sourcing extra product to capitalise on the airspace we have annually at the landfill, which got a process in place where we're just working on that. And once we know what the figures are at the end of this year, we'll be able to say what our processing costs are, that we can review where we're at. Also, we'll still continue to do the transfer station statistics and just take on the stats to see where we're at in consideration for next year. And then obviously we've just commenced with Solo the services review in regard to the possible extension of that curbside, which is going to potentially bring a green waste bin in, for the township, and then a recycling service for the rural area. So we've started that process because obviously there's a big lead time for that as well. Next slide. Over and above that, the projects we've got is obviously we've got asset management plans, reviews and development. We've still got the grant funding, which we need to address. We've got an extension of time till 30th of June for that. That's about $1.7 million worth of work. We've also got the due constraints projects, which is all those ones listed there, and potentially the commencement and design of the last ones, which are Blanchetown Boat Ramp, Morgan Riverfront, Arnold Park, and there's one other one which escapes me. Standpipes, we're about to place the order for the 8 stations, and we're still waiting on the supplement 2 to see whether we get the extra ones to come on board. Street lighting is the progression of the rollout is to do. That's being done by Sapin and Enovin. We still have a bit of work to do on the plant replacement and machinery AMP. And you may recall that we put a elected member briefing about, rather than going like for like, looking at what we need for our future requirements, because industry probably dictates how we do our work. And obviously they look at their own efficiencies because they've got their own profit base. And if we can mimic what they do, well, then obviously we're going to be in a better position. Development assessments. Our engineer is always tied up with doing development assessments. So whenever there's a planning issue or land division and so forth, there's a lot of investigation into that. And obviously we have that now with infrastructure agreements. I think right now we've got about 3 infrastructure agreements to now assess through the battery storage stations by 2. And I think it's 2, one solar farm and another one progressing. And there's still another couple of, and the palm wind farm, there's a few other ones still working through those as well. And also we're just starting the tender for the detailed design on the Swan Reach swims. And also in our swims area, we're looking at doing over a 3-year cycle, looking at all the functionality of our swims to see where we sit and what we need to do for our future, I suppose, future proofing of our swims, rather than actually seeing what we need to do and having call outs every other day of the week. See if we can do it by automation. Yes, I want to do it well. The Barossa Council does it well. It's just that we have 30-odd schemes and we have to basically visit the site to fix something, whether we can actually do it by remote, and be able to track what our systems are doing. So that's another project that's starting this year. Next slide. Just to highlight that there's a lot of issues out there that we will probably never get to, or they need to be funded. Law Road's been an ongoing matter. We've been trying to deal with the local landowner. Unfortunately that's fallen through. So there's a process we're trying to go through now to see how we're going to repair that, and that'll obviously need our budget amendment to it. A lot of people ask for boat ramp improvements. Basically, what we do is we set a service standard. We go and clean them once a year. We've been doing it twice a year. But there's obviously a lot of call for boat ramp renewals, and similarly with riverbank areas and reclamations, they want, I won't say they all want, but they Marion Reserve and probably Graham Claxton and Swan Reach are probably the pinnacle areas, and they seem to be what a lot of towns would like. Stormwater is obviously unfunded. Some of the river structures, we've always been looking at doing a preventative maintenance program where we oil each the timbers annually. Wear and tear, because obviously we have wood rot and vermin controls. That's something we still need to address. The Morgan Wharf remediation, other than planning, is still sitting there. We also have areas that are going to service, and we're looking at seeking efficiencies, and Manum Oval is probably one, where basically one of our local Manum gardener spends a lot of time at Manum Oval, but then he also has a lot of other areas here in Manum. We have to support him in that role, whereas in other towns we don't have to support him. So we're looking at other efficiencies for irrigation there, and just trying to free his time up. Still got some flood remediation as listed in the report today, and obviously there's community expectations which takes us way over capacity, and then there's everything else is what everyone else wants. So we're just going to try and deal with that and manage those issues. Next slide. So how are we going to deliver? Basically, our capital programs are set and funded. We just got to assess our capacity to do with that. Hence why we have the accelerated works program. And maintenance, that creates challenges for us, because obviously in all those programs I set just the table, my maintenance crew have to do some of those areas as well. So while they're often dealing with customer requests, they still have to have these put into place to do these works. And I suppose if we just want to look at some of the examples of setting service standards, which Gary's done most of his areas, and now it's infrastructure and field services to work out. Is we're developing service standards and visitation. And I suppose if you look at tree issues, the first example there is we're going to call about a tree, and someone will expect us to be there within about 48 hours to trim or cut it or whatever. What we're looking at doing is potentially we'll go and inspect it, and if it's deemed by, say, myself or someone else and says, yes, it's not a danger, we'll block it out, rather than getting in our contractor that has to have a cherry picker 20 or 30 times a year to do a heap of trees. We'll block those trees out and say, right, we'll get them in February, March, do all those trees, then lump them out again and do all those trees again. So trying to get some efficiencies in the appointment of contractors. And obviously we also have those other issues where, you know, we've got roadside tree trimming for our patrol graders, which is a struggle to do. Stormwater, as it's stated, we're looking at, we'll inspect, we'll rate it based on risk, we'll record it, relate funding. Our road maintenance has a lot of cyclic programs, the grading, patching, and that's done within our capacity. It's based on priority and hierarchy, so we have our standards there. I mentioned earlier, we've got to be in a position where we set our own priorities, and sealed roads, like I said, it's a fairly substantial job if a sealed road fails. If I just give you an example, Belvedere Road, you go down Belvedere Road, there's cracking, edge breaks, material, minor defects, and deformation of the surface. Needs a rear seal. The signage needs to be upgraded, and basically there's a lot of edge breaks in that area. It's in a 50 to 80k zone. You do the same on Millandilla Road. There's a lot of edge breaks and shoulder degradation. But if we don't get to that now, it's only going to cost us more in the future. So our priorities from here on in will be that we need to look at those jobs and get them done, which means we have to put our hands up and say no to others. So we're looking at how we do that. Again, another one that's very controversial is weeds and road verges, and rural trees and patrol grading. They're issues that we need to address. We do now have a fact sheet which says that fact sheet, generally it's a joint responsibility, and a lot of other city councils have gone through a process where they're trying to pull back from the amount of time they do on road verges so they can do other things. Because when they go do their road verges, they go to whippersnapper, mower, air blower, and then a street sweeper just to go down one street. And they do that 7 or 8 times a year. I think it's about $3 million. I think it was for Port Adelaide Enfield at the time. I think
I've got the money.
Yeah, but they're trying to cut back. So we've got to try and cut back. We can't keep going out there 15 times a year just to cut down weeds when there's a bit of a complaint.
I have a question in regards to that of like, say, Trees for Life, or like how we have sections of roadside that are then adopted by community groups and things like that.
ESAP groups.
ESAP group and things like that to get more engagement with those organisations that then get people out there to work in volunteer capacities to take it away from how we're.
I'm probably looking at a road envelope and basically working on road works, trying to get volunteers to work on a road.
Yeah.
It's difficult. We had the same thing with trying to do traffic control and marshalling at the last briefing. Trying to get anyone to do anything on roads is a nightmare, because it's the same thing with liability insurances. Basically they're working under us as a PCBU. So it is difficult. I mean, Trees for Life, if they want to go out and do something in an open space area, great. But
Different ways to do their road verge, aren't they, outside your house without getting council approved, maybe just some little articles on that, like what you're
Getting
allowed
people to take on.
Imagine if we all outside of our house.
Yeah.
Isn't that a little bit like, you know, you get, say, a community group. It happened in Goodell. You got a group that came, they wanted a playground, so they raised some money, built a playground. But then the playground's dumped on council to look after it for the next 30 years. If you get, and there was a group in Morgan that wanted to plant trees everywhere. If they want to plant trees, then they just walk away.
Yeah, I just mean kill your weeds outside.
Yeah.
So,
Pull them out so you don't have to spray them.
One thing with the roadside verges and stuff, like we've got peppercorns, boxthorn and things like that that need to be controlled.
It is up to the owners of those properties to have control over those weeds, because spraying's not gonna
Necessarily get rid of them. And with the roadside verge clearing, I noticed near me recently, there were so many that were, you know, that were weed species. It could just be knocked out and then we don't have to worry about coming back and clearing that peppercorn again, you know, like every time it grows back. We should be culling some of those weed species, so then it makes it less work in the future.
We've got a roadside vegetation management plan, which actually shows the envelope we work in. That's their level of jurisdiction, and then it puts the onus onto the others, about what they do outside of that road envelope. But basically, all we want to do is work within the road envelope, because we can't do manicuring from that side of that side,
No,
and no council does.
no.
Yeah.
Keep moving, Dave.
So, yeah, basically, as listed, the program works will be, we want to just, I suppose, revamp the 10-1-1 report, so we've got more in regards to what's being done, so that everyone's up to speed and probably sets the factors of what we do. So next slide, how we're going to deliver it. Obviously, as brought up today, we plan to catch up. But then we could have a storm event. We don't know. We're just going to wait and see how it goes. So we'll do an updated 10-1-1 attachment report. So we'll be more of a status report. We'll be looking at a 3-year rolling program, which is a council guide only. It's not out there as in verbatim, because you only adopt your annual budget annually. But it gives us an idea as to a rolling program, thinking about what we're planning on doing. And then a 15-year program gives us something that we can use as a forecast for, obviously, betterment where we can, and improvement program. Obviously, and the next one is the improvement program. We just can't keep going like for like. Yeah, obviously, people expect footpaths and roads to be sealed and whatever else needs to be done. So look at what we need to do and have those priorities. We've already got some of that in our rural road network through the MRLGA road strategy. So we'd like to be able to incorporate that as well. Through the setting of service standards, we have our cyclic program and our service delivery levels. We'll be bringing that back to council to consult and adopt. And then obviously we probably need to do an education process for the community based on their expectations and decrease the demand servicing. We have a lot of demands placed on us by habitual complainers, if I like to put it that way, or people who are always writing, or persistent people. And we're going to get to a stage where our resources will only go so far. And then obviously expect that we cannot achieve what is expected. So we're going to manage those inquiries. So the last slide is questions.
Sorry, we asked our questions during the presentation. I
Slide
have a
ready
question
for
now.
you.
Information there.
I mean, even though we know what we're doing, you give us those reports, a snapshot like that is kind of just astonishing how much work there is. And I think it's part of the informing the public process. You know, summaries like that would be extremely valuable in marketing, promotion of what you do achieve. Because so often it's what you don't achieve, and you should be promoting what you do achieve. So your Facebook posts, for instance, of what you've done, are terrific. You know, I think it's an enormous job.
In saying that, we do, when we do get complaints, we actually tell people just to go to 10-1-1 report. Because everyone says, what do we get for your rates? The development of fact sheets also has been really a good bonus for us.
Yeah.
People get writing about, you know, how bad my road is. Yep, no, we're saying thanks. Here's a fact sheet about our road network. And we have actually heard that from some people.
Yeah.
So it actually works. It's an education process and
Yeah.
it's working.
All right, thank you, Dave. Okay.
That was tiring listening, so
Yeah,
I really
that's
feel for your department. Yeah, bloody
Yeah.
good job.
We're out there on the roads with you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So we'll go on to our next presentation, which is a sustainability review for buildings, land and community facilities. So Vicky is joining us, so she'll be able to contribute, done a lot of work on the compiling of what we've got. Doesn't want to join us.
Yep.
So the purpose and scope of this review is to review council's buildings, land and community facilities with the objective of identifying opportunities to divest assets, excess to councils and the community's needs. So identify what we've got and then work through a process to potentially divest any that are in excess. So just got a summary. So we've got 421 parcels of land owned by council or under care and control of council, so Crown land. Out of those, we have 228 parcels of land, which are council owned, and there's another slide which I'll go through in a minute, because that is not just, there's two types of council land. One is community land and one is council already that we own, or community land has been excluded. So as you can see, 421 parcels, and that it can be a parcel of land, it can be a road verge, it could be a medium strip, there's a whole plethora of things that can possibly be. So out of the 228 that we have 64 that are council-owned land currently excluded from land status, community land status. So the community land status was obviously either revocated at the time that we inherited this, or it was our land, or we've gone through a process like we did last year or 2 years ago when it was, to revocate the community land status, which is a lengthy process, which I'll talk about. Out of the 228, there's 60 parcels of lands that is council owned with improvements or buildings on it. So 60 out of that 228, 37 of that 60, and correct me if I'm getting any of this wrong, Vicky, because there's obviously a fair bit of detail in this, have leases, licenses, or management agreements.
That's 37 of the 228.
Of 37 of the 228, sorry, that has a lease or license or a management agreement. So out of the 228, what we've deemed as unsaleable land is 102 parcels of land. And unsaleable land might be drainage, it might be a cemetery, might be a medium strip or a verge, a public toilet, water covered, so a marina. We have classified CFS sites in there because we have written to the CFS and the state government to say whether they want those, but they don't. But that is a question for discussion. Ferry landings or lookouts. So out of 228, 102 have been determined through our process to be unsaleable. Out of the 228, we've identified approximately 126 as being saleable. Now that doesn't mean anyone's going to buy them, doesn't mean there's any market value in it. It just means that there's a conversation to be had on those parcels of land. Any questions as of yet? No?
Just one quick one. You said ferry landings.
Yep.
That pricked my ears up because as far as I was aware, that section up to where the barrier is actually owned by the department.
Yeah, it depends. So there's some that are old ones that are not necessarily in operation. Or Vicky, if you want to give another, is there another example?
Yeah, some we have a few that are actually barring.
Okay, Blomstead ones.
Yeah, I'll cover them. It's a lot of.
So not current operation is all.
Yeah.
This would be obsolete things. So maybe there's one in Morgan that used to be a ferry slip. So not a ferry slip, but a ferry land. So so Vicky, anything on that?
No, unsaleable can be anything. It's like this council office, we could sell it. It's just anything operational, depots, it's all listed in there. And the potentially saleable can be an old water reserve that might be in the middle of farmers farm. And they're already cropping it, and it's this little square, and it's going to be not worth a lot. And the process to actually sell it, and the only person who can sell it would be to the farmer or a government, so obviously on it for or something. There's a lot that would have to come out of that once, because I'm doing spreadsheets and I can't see what they're like, where they are, without going on Google Earth for 228 times, which I will. And still you can't see everything on that without actually going out and having a look. Some land looks flat, and obviously it's not all flat. Yeah, a lot of that would diminish one's further investigation.
Oops, that's my screen, not your screen. So with the process, so what do? So we've identified all these opportunities that could be divested. And divestment could be selling, or it could be selling to a community group for them to take responsibility for it. So there's different variations of what that could be selling to the farmer, as Vicky has just outlined. Giving it, yeah. So divesting doesn't mean necessarily selling it for a consideration. So what do we do with this? So community land, as you would be aware, Section 193 of the Local Government Act outlines what you have to do to revocate community land. You have to do multiple stages of community consultation, which we did with those parcels of land that we identified 12 months ago, whenever it was. We would go ask the community, they would give us feedback. Once we council determined that they wanted to revocate that community land, we would then write to the minister. The minister would consider our application. It's a very lengthy process, very detailed, but that's what we have to do for community land. If it is currently council land, so either the community land has been revocated or didn't have community land status previously, we've got a disposal of land and assets policy, which outlines, again, community consultation, whether there's local interest in that parcel of land, because it could be between two farmers' land, it's landlocked, so realistically there's no market other than those two potentially take it. But it outlines the process that we need to go through, including valuations and testing the market to see whether someone is interested in trying to generate obviously the most significant return for council, or that could be potentially gifting that piece of parcel of land because it's worth nothing, and the process to get it valued and also go through a process to try to sell it would be worth more. All of those things. So any questions on the process? So two types, community land, got to go through a revocation process, and council land, we would follow our policy. We would still undertake community consultation and engagement on the list that we finalise.
Ben, did we get ministerial approval for the original parcels of land?
Yeah. So we fast tracked one, which then we had to take back because of the issue with Mount Waters. And then we got the process.
So where are we at with those then?
We haven't gone to market for them, but we've been received approval to do that.
Yeah.
So then sorry, my screen versus yours. Considerations. So the value of land. So these are the things we need to consider as we work through this process. So the value of land and buildings. Is there a value? How much is and what's the cost of the process? Is there a potential market? Because you could be, as we find in Clive's section 184 process, there may be zero interest in buying a parcel of land in the middle of, I won't mention a town or an area because I don't want to offend anyone, but there might not actually be a market. So council would need to consider what we do with that, which could potentially gift it to the community. And that community consultation component, that community expectation is really important. As we found when we went through that process with some parcel of land in Cambrai, where there was a significant community interest in that. So council made the decision to withdraw that or remove that from that process. And so we would need to consider that, council would need to consider the expectations of the community on those parcels of land. Some of these are going to be quite valuable. For example, as a river parcel of land on the river. Now, they may have an expectation that is it remain for community use, or no, we're happy to sell it and use that money to maintain one of the other open spaces that we have. So
I guess when we go out for community consultation, it'd be great to have a little blurb saying, this is consultation. We are looking for your feedback. In the past, we have changed decisions, just so that they don't get that angst, because like the Canberra angst on the Facebook. So, and we often now as councillors get on there and say, hey, we have been open-minded and we have changed decision, but it'd be good if the consultation somehow had that factored in so that people understand.
we'll make it as clear as possible. That it's not-
It won't be clear, no.
Well, it'll be clear. It's whether
And I think when it comes to lands, community consultation or going out to community feedback is important, but with our Aboriginal community and with native title being processed right now for the Mid-Murray region, I do feel that we need to consult the Aboriginal elders separately to how we do our normal consultation process, they need to be
That was
spoken.
part of today's one. I noticed both groups were ticked in the Play Out Way one, so they're actually now.
In there to be
Yeah.
consulted.
Yeah.
And I think that is definitely needed to be happening with these consultations of land parcels, because I know Nana and Auntie Jenny were a bit upset that they weren't engaged in those previous land parcels. And we put things out to consultation, the Canberra community came forward and that was a great outcome for that river access to the Marne River. But I think for maybe our future Crown land parcels, this won't necessarily be the same for council-owned lands, but say
We're not.
community, the community land parcels, I'm saying, the ones that are community land parcels that could be maybe valuable to our First Nation elder groups, that they should be consulted separately before we then
So that's
take
up
it out to
council. When it
consultation.
comes to council, we
Mm.
determine who we're consulting with,
Mm.
that new little sheet, it's nice and clear now, so be very aware, and I have pointed it out a few times now when we're doing it, just please make sure someone's not keep doing what someone else,
Mm.
let the staff know, so council approve who we consult with, it's up to us.
Thank you. So yeah, that's the considerations as we work through this process. So five, right? Bit of stretching. So next steps, so further investigation. So Vicky's spreadsheet that is compiled all the information across the business is significant. And there's some further work that still needs to be done to make sure we've captured everything, and we're assessing, for example, our asset management plan that's been incorporated into the spreadsheets that we're using to identify all the parcels of land. They've got IDs, they've got all the information for that. Our council report, so there will be a council report provided to the elected members for you to consider and confirm community engagement and stakeholder engagement, which is the next point. For those parcels of lands that we identify and recommend to you that further investigation happens. Part of that will be asking the question and asking the community whether there is interest in that parcel of land, because we're not going to sell something if there's just no interest as such. Subject to council's decisions, we would commence the revocation of community land process and start that process through the minister and any other considerations that we determine as we work through the process. So that's a snapshot of where we're at and where to from here. And I think the next question is discussion and questions. The process, Vicky, did I miss anything or?
Well. So how complex is it to prioritize things into these ones should be the easiest to dispose of? These ones are going to be the complex, long-lasting ones, so they should be maybe down the bottom of the pile. Let's see if we can get some results. But I don't know how easy that is to achieve.
It's not easy, but it's
No.
one of my next steps to
Yeah.
just try and,
Yeah.
you know, if
Prioritise.
something is a
Small
building
wins.
plot size.
Yeah.
Or something that's this big at the end of a road, obviously the building plot size,
Yeah.
you're looking into first. So
And the big ticket items, essentially, when it comes to, say, we were talking about halls and things like that, where community groups might be wanting to take over already the establishment of those halls, where we know it's kind of like already there's someone who's an interested party that we already know that would take care and control of those buildings because they already kind of are in a lease arrangement. To then be looking at maybe some of those ones first as a priority to unload because it's already an interested party without having to go and find a potential buyer for land parcels.
Just on that, a lot of the community groups wouldn't actually have the capital to purchase the hall, no doubt.
But it might be a dollar, it's not
Yeah.
necessarily.
This idea of gifting,
Yeah.
you know,
Avoid
reasonable.
maintenance costs.
Just on the parcels of land that we did last year, or what it was, there was one at Bow Hill where there was a person was already interested in purchasing during that process. Did that end up
Yeah.
going through?
Yeah. But yeah, they instigated prior to the process. Yeah, that was fine.
When I'm Vicky on the spreadsheet, I did walk in on Vicky pulling her hair out the other day with the spreadsheet, so thank you.
Stressful.
I am, if you do need somebody to drive around and have a look, I'm open to touring our area, so let me know.
Me
Or
too.
someone will come with me. and
I'll come with you for
we
that
can
too.
take photos and have a look if you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mm.
Any questions? So it's a big process. Plenty of work has been going on in the background to get to where we are. As I said, report to council and then community consultation engagement to make sure that we're doing what's in the best interest of the community, which will be interesting because we want people to engage and tell us. Because in the past,
And I think that's part of our job too, I think. We can get out there a bit more and keep saying, we need your feedback, you
All right. With no more questions, thank you, Vicky, for the work that you've done on that. You can go back to your spreadsheet.
Thank you.
Okay, home stretch 5, cemeteries and memorials policy review, which, as you're aware, has been ongoing for a while.
We've just got a short,
Sorry, Clive, I'll give you.
Ben doesn't want to be in control of this one.
yeah, after making a few minor changes to the cemeteries memorial policy, trying to incorporate something about roadside memorials, it became obvious that it's a bit more complicated than just adding a couple of paragraphs. So after doing a bit of research, I looked at the various different state government guidance papers, which mainly basically direct responsibility back to local councils, where the state government, even on their own roads, they're only really worried about the carriageway and outside the carriageway, or basically the guideposts. It was the responsibility of local government. So I think the only exception was in freeways. After looking, there's not too many roadside memorials as far as rural councils are concerned. Probably the only one that I found was the Port Augusta City Council. And basically their basic principles were, you know, roadside memorial is not permitted without council approval. Obviously requires a lodgement of an application form. They maintain a register which had the name and the contact details of the applicant, the location, type, and prevalence of the memorial. You know, there was conditions where council reserved the right to remove this if it's any unapproved memorial or a approved memorial is considered inappropriate or beyond repair. When the memorial was removed, they had basically an obligation that council would make every effort to contact them, basically going back to that register that I mentioned previously prior to the removal. And if not, there was no contact, the council would remove the memorial and store it for 12 months for collection. Roadside memorials, they had a limit for a period of 6 months. After that time, the council would remove and retain once again for 12 months for collection of family. The memorial was in the form of a white cross, and they, along with the guidelines, not to exceed 750 millimetres high by 500 mil wide by 400 mils deep below the ground. And it had to be made of a vegetable timber. Obviously, that's in case anyone goes off the roadside and comes contact in it. It doesn't become an object which can fly over the bottom of the vehicle or go through someone on a motorbike. And it wasn't, and it couldn't be cemented in as well. So if you couldn't be anchored basically. They had specific locations for memorial, could not be located. And basically it was common sense, roundabouts, intersections within 3 metres of the road sill. Yeah, and it couldn't be put on any other structure that the council had on the roadside. So what I did then was I actually sent an email to the local government risk mutual liability scheme, who obviously insures the council for our public liability, and asked them for some advice as far as the policy of Port Augusta had. They basically said they didn't quite agree with the process. They said that it should be a section 221 permit application, which allows someone to do works on council land. And also it should ensure that the bylaw enables a section 221 for this purpose to be actually be granted, I suppose. Yep. Our current 221 permit fee is $75. And look, that's up to council whether they would wish to, if they had such a policy, whether they wish to waive that fee for this particular purpose. They say that the application should have terms, obviously, and a time frame. This enforces that it should be a temporary memorial for the period that the memorial should be active. And I suppose my take is this is seen as a bridging between the unfortunate event and the funeral ceremony and a grieving period. As council issues the 221 permit, then council is responsible to inspect and ensure the obligation terms being adhered. So that's what that came back. Liability said, well, if you're getting a 221 permit, then council, you put your name, you've got basically obligation and responsibility to look that everything's been adhered. It's not just like giving someone an application, a proven application, and let it go ahead. And also, they actually said that there should be kind of regular inspections, and there should be some type of log to ensure that council has been doing its due diligence. Because I suppose in the instance when something goes wrong, your only defence is basically some type of documentation that you've done some inspections of it. So probably just the last one I've got there, basically just reinforcing that policy and council's bylaw needs to be enabled the 221 permit to be issued. And then once again, council takes legal responsibility for the roadside memorial. Possible issues in some of the other documents I looked at was issues including adjoining landowners. They may not appreciate that a roadside memorial is being located alongside their property and or near their property entrance. Like at previous council, I remember having a complaint that one of the property owners' children didn't want to walk past the memorial because they all thought that dead people were there. So there is, you've got to balance it up. And look, there may be issues if council wants to go down this track. You might have to do some type of mediation between the two parties.
But there was an example of that in the Adelaide Hills of a town I was driving through where someone had actually died right outside someone's fence line, oak fence, and there was, I'm aware that there were problems between the owners and the fact that a memorial was just put there by the family, and they would have like large groups of people coming and just standing around with their fence line, and they actually wanted to do some work in its front yard, which involved removing the fence, which was not possible with the memorial right there outside it. So it can create some issues, like emotional.
Yeah, that's right. And then staff, I suppose, once we have a policy and whatever that policy contains, whatever period and conditions, that would require staff to follow that council policy and possibly remove unapproved memorials and memorials to comply with the 221 permit requirements, whether it's be out of time or whatever, or that's not made to whatever the requirements were stipulated. And obviously this situation may be emotionally confronting to the family where the employer is required to remove a roadside memorial, and you've got that risk. Someone else just doing their job, being told what to do, and being confronted with people. So, look, if council wants to continue with like having a separate policy, then what I would do is the cemeteries and memorial policy would just refer to a roadside memorial policy and wouldn't actually contain any information within that other policy. And I suppose just the only other thing I've got there, this would be an additional service that council is providing if you go ahead with that. So, it's probably just open to debate that, does council want to go through, do they want to model it something around the Port Augusta one? Can you see any think that you might want in or out of that. So, yeah, because obviously there's a whole lot of, different ways I could actually write a policy, but I don't want to write something and someone say, well, why do you do that, Clive? Because, I don't think anyone wants to support that, but and that might be, I might be thinking I'm doing the right thing with my personal view, but yeah.
A lot of the car crashes that kill young people are in the country. It's because I think it becomes so emotional because often it is a young person that's died. So if we're gonna go for it, 6 months, I don't know, that's quite long enough to breathe.
That's what I was going to
Yeah,
raise,
that's
yes.
my only comment.
I think at least a year, like a year.
I agree with a set time.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
but I
at
just wonder.
Barossa, we had 15 months
Mhm.
and with a negotiation for extension.
Yeah.
The panel felt that wasn't sufficient.
Yeah.
I do think people are going to do it regardless of whether we have a permit in place of this. It's happening, they're doing it, it's happening already.
But they don't want to have it removed.
And we don't have it removed, and maybe if we did have this policy, it would then allow them to be able to look up that policy to know what is approved by council. And then go within those guidelines. We don't have fairy lights and, a whole memorial garden. It's just a memorial, it's just a simple memorial area of where to mark where they have
I
died.
like the idea that it's the period. That makes a lot of sense.
I wouldn't, like the 12 months because the 12 months is an anniversary. If you're going to extend it, I wouldn't, like,
So, but at least a minimum of a year.
so it might be something like, 15, 16 months, for a period of time.
So I know of a few on the Sturt Highway that are
I
actually
don't know of any.
like reefs. And they're actually attached to farmers' fences. So is that an agreement between the farmer and the people?
They have to be.
Yeah.
But maybe within this policy, like you're saying, like nowhere near a gate or entrance is something that we put within that policy, or maybe the council actually goes out with the family to erect in a suitable spot. So
Yeah,
then we don't have to have a follow-up check-in.
So
We know it's in a spot that's approved.
I think you can put enough in the policy to say, a distance away from someone's entrance
Yeah.
or opposite someone's entrance to cover that. Because you don't want to start the day of pulling out your driveway and looking across it and more,
I think
So
also
so
to say
again, the Barossa one, we had the permission of property owner.
Yeah.
It's part of that, right?
part of the criteria.
Yeah.
So
And
they've actually got a policy.
They've got a policy, or they had a memorial policy, which is now included in a broader policy, so they got a section specifically around roadside memorials.
yeah,
Which I also think probably makes sense, but is there a specific reason you think for a separate policy, John? When it's separate
It's
policy
response.
just for that, or?
I think it's enough important enough to have a policy by itself, I think. It's like we've got to ensure that the bylaws allow us to do so it's, it could take a period of time to kind of get it going because you have to visit by law as well.
Well, it has to go into that process of getting it, yes.
Yeah, so there is a portion of time that could be
What, so if we have this policy, how are existing memorials affected?
they'd be deemed to be either
Eventually that'll be removed, but that's not the way we approach it.
because it'll be deemed to be.
Pre policy, all those ones would have been negotiated to be removed.
Any other questions or comments on Clive, who got more slides?
the question I had in regards to the maintenance of, obviously, like, if we are allowing this permit for, say, 15 months or 24 months, whatever, that needed to be maintained or looked at by council to ensure that it remains safe and structurally sound. And I feel like that is an expense we don't necessarily want for our maintenance crews, have to be going around and checking on the safety parameters of the memorials 12 months on. So I don't know, I feel like that's why I was suggesting maybe if it was something that if they wanted and requested within their applying for the permit, that it was a structure that we installed. So then we have already eyeballed that it's been done safely, that it's not concreted in, that it's in a relevantly suitable location for all involved. And then that would not require the follow-up within the 12 months because it's been put in by a council worker to the, parameters of our permit.
Sort of 6 to 1, half dozen of the
Well,
other.
it's one instead of
Because-
them having to come back constantly to check on it, right?
But your application would
Includes
say
the
where
fee.
you're going to actually put it,
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
and then you could actually do an alteration to their application.
Just in
So
that
it's what it
commentary, you
is.
said how they said maintenance activities, like ensuring it, and I was like, oh, that's where it costs us more money.
We wouldn't be maintaining it, but
Yeah.
would ensure that it's being maintained.
Yeah.
Other slides, Clive, or?
Sorry, that's not.
Any other comments? No, thank you, and hopefully we can close it out to an extent, especially the cemeteries policy. Given we've still got the deputation that's waiting for that to be finalised, so we can communicate the decision. Council can finalise the policy. Thank you. So the last section is just a review of a couple of policies that I communicated out to you. First one is the complaints policy. Hopefully you've had a chance to read. I'm just looking for any feedback on it. If anything stands out in this policy, it will come back to you. I've reviewed it. Probably my only thing that stands out is in section 6, where it talks about the lodgement of complaints. 6.12 says complaints can contact council via email, mail, in-person phone, council's website and social media. So we don't really deal with social media as a two-way street. As if we had to deal with them as they were all complaints, then we would be just responding to complaints all day, every day.
Remove that.
So our expectation is that they are communicated via a formal process. But the process is pretty self-explanatory. It outlines what needs to be done and what can be done. So really, if there's any feedback on anything that you feel needs to change, other than that, I'm comfortable with the policy as it is. Hey, your silence is comfortableness. You'll obviously get to review that and track changes, even though you'll probably be limited in council meeting at September. The second policy is the support for national commemorations and celebrations policy. In reviewing this, we feel that this is something we don't necessarily need. Sometimes you have policies for the sake of policies, and Laura, we can deal with this internally. The things that are in there being Anzac Day and Remembrance Day, Australia Day, Volunteers Day and NAIDOC Week, they can be managed operationally. We have plans in our strategic plan and we have budgets. And so I would propose that we potentially revoke this policy rather than have it. Laura, do you want to add anything else? Does anyone have a strong desire that we need to have a support for national commemorations and celebrations policy? No? All good then.
But I wondered in there, it talks about volunteer celebrations, and at the moment we hold the mayor's reception that's not in volunteer week. Thoughts on, so we're due to have them at the end of the year, which is near Christmas, thoughts of moving them to next year. To get close to volunteer week.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
We do a volunteer for council
Yes.
volunteers, so for in volunteer week
Mm,
internally and on the external thing, which is what we use in the mayor's reception. So
Thanking the community.
Yeah. Makes sense to have it. Yeah.
Yeah, my Carol said, I thought it was nice. Yeah, it's nice. It's around okay. That was the end of this year and next year it gets better.
we did get,
So April.
I think in the past 2 years ago when we had it, we had, no, I think we did one, just happened to be pouring rain.
Yes,
Where
it was.
Where was that?
Walk Lane.
Yeah, that was coincidental. But one year we did it and it was freezing and it was dark by 5 o'clock and there wasn't a lot of uptake. So trying to find a space where.
Yeah, which would be March. Maybe we should just go with March.
We'll find an appropriate time, but that was feedback, wasn't it?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. That is the end of the agenda. for the briefing. Thank you for your contributions. We will acknowledge Laura again, from a briefing perspective, but, we wish you all the best for your, move to Charlestown. So thank you for your last attendance at a briefing, and you can more than welcome to keep coming. Just because, you know,
We can't wait to see you online.
Online,
Yeah. Have you like a laugh?
yeah.